And it's another week and another time to jump into a new episode of Direct Edition.
And welcome to another episode of Direct Edition. I'm your host, Tommy, and we're going to find out if Jared is going to survive this season of Game of Thrones.
It doesn't look good, but then again, it doesn't look for anybody.
I'm betting you're out. You're done.
Yeah,
you're not going to make it.
It tends not to look good for
Nobody else is going to make it. I think they're all going to die.
It's possible.
Every character. The Night King is going to be the last man standing.
I kind of think that too.
He's going to kill the dragon at the end. Like, he's just like, I don't even want you here.
Oh, man.
Yeah, all of them.
Game of Thrones, guys. Can we talk about at least part of the season? We don't want to spoil any of the new episodes if you haven't seen them, but if you haven't seen episodes 1 and 2 by now, I think we at least can talk about those.
Fair
I think
enough.
It's safe. I think my favorite moments so far from the show, episode 2 was really good. We had a lot of those kind of
Lighthearted.
Oh,
something we don't normally get on Game of Thrones.
Totally lighthearted.
You know?
But also, there was a lot of important conversations that needed to be happening of characters that either hadn't been on the same room or let alone the same continent. So I think that one was really good. Episode 1 kind of chugged a little bit, but I think that was just...
It's always, they'll say, exposition. It's always kind of tough to kind of get...
But
we've been off the air for what? 2 years?
Almost 2 years.
Yeah. So, I mean... And honestly, I was excited about it coming back. There was a part of me that was like, you know what, this has been off for so long. I don't know how I feel. Sure. And then I got, of course, as soon as the first episode popped up, I was like, all right, I'm back into this. And because I wasn't real sure what I would remember and what I wouldn't. You know, and I wasn't one of those people that went back and rewatched all, 7 seasons to kind of, I think I started with season 1 and got to episode 3 and was just like, you know what, I don't have time for this. I've been into it. I agree. Episode 2 was solid. There was a lot of great moments between all of the characters. We're teeing up a lot of things we've all been anticipating, for a while now. And, there was that scene where they were, planning out the battle strategy against the, the White Walkers. And, I think every character that's still alive in Game of Thrones was in that room, minus Bronn and Cersei. Those are the only characters I think that weren't, and Yara wasn't there because she went to the Iron Islands, but everybody else was in that room. And it was just really interesting to think that we followed these characters for, the better part of a decade, and that's the first time they've all been in the same room together.
Right. Well, and they all have a common goal, and they all have a common enemy, or at least I think they do. But it was really daunting to see the war table where they have all their strategies laid out, and then it does that outpan, and you just see all the tiles representing, the horde of White Walkers, and you're just like, oh, that's a good visual of what they're kind of up against. But yeah, I don't know who's going to survive, but if this episode was any indication, or at least episode 2 was any indication, they dropped a lot of little lines, like Tyrion saying to either Varys or one of the other individuals that was in that hallway, is like, one of you is going to end up wearing the pin when all of this is done, or meaning the hand of the queen. So was that foreshadowing? I don't know. Brienne had a really happy moment with her being knighted by Jaime, and nobody smiles in Game of Thrones and ends up living.
I could write her off. I could be fine with that. I mean, I love the character. I think she's very unique, and it's same time, it's like she's been sort of a side character, so I don't know how much more she could actually push the story forward. So again, we are wrapping everything up with Game of Thrones, so it's like to really start to now speculate, we're going to start losing characters that we've loved for a long time. So everybody prepare yourselves. This is going to be a wild ride of a season. The first 2 episodes have been a little bit slow, but 100%. Episode 3 picks it up a lot, and we're going to see for the end of the season. I'm not even not convinced that Daenerys isn't our villain at the end of this thing. We'll see.
Anything's possible. And I think that's the kind of key point, is that anything can happen, and we don't know how this is going to go because we have no reference material for it. But, at the end of the day, we just kind of have to accept it for what it is, hope it ends well, and that it's well received.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just excited to
All
see
right.
it.
So before we wrap this part of the show out, top three, 100% not going to make it to the end of the season.
Top three, got to be, for me at least, Brienne, Bran, and probably Jon. I think
okay.
Jon made the fatal Stark error of trusting somebody with important information that may end up getting him killed.
All right, I can get behind those. So, my top three real quick are I definitely think Sir Davos. Mm-hmm. He's out. He's just a lovable character. And he's gone. I don't know about Tyrion. Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna say Tyrion's gonna stick this one out because he's one of those characters that just seems like he would endure. I definitely, it may not be Jon, but one of the Stark kids is definitely out.
Okay.
So, all right, that's my picks, man.
Yeah, and speaking of top picks, we actually want to go ahead and get into our next segment, which will be talking about our comic book picks for the week of May 8th. Come back later. This week, as with every week, we want to talk about the new comic books hitting the shelves. This is the week of May 8th, and Tommy, let me know what's coming out.
All right, big exciting week coming up. All right, DC Comics, Flash, number 70. This is the year one storylines. For those of you who are not familiar with the origins of Flash, Barry Allen, this is a great place to jump right in and figure out how Barry Allen existed in his first year as the Flash. Along with the Flash, number 70, we've got Batman Who Laughs, number 5. This has been a great series. It's a spin-off of the Dark Knight's Metal series, and it's wrapping up with issue number 5. Issue number 6 is going to be our last issue, so again, looking forward to that one. From Marvel, we've got Conan the Barbarian, number 6, and we've got Symbiote Spider-Man, number 2, and these one-shots from Star Wars, Age of the Republic. This is going to feature Boba Fett, and I'm looking forward to that one. Those have been some really interesting stories. From Image Comics, we've got Excellence, number 1. Jared, I think you've got some opinions about that, and you want to share them to us. And from Archie Comics, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, number 2. Again, this is not a full or extensive list. These are just ones we are looking forward to. For more information about what's coming down this week, make sure you stop by your local comic book store or go to previewsworld.com. Jared.
Yes.
Top picks. What are you thinking?
Like you said, I think for me, Excellence number 1 is something that I'm really excited about. I tend to be a bit of an Image hound. I like the self-contained worlds that Image provides, because they tend to be a little bit more novel and new and original. I don't have to get invested in a full overarching universe like I do with Marvel and DC. So with Excellence, it kind of hits all my notes of it's a little bit cool, it's a little bit edgy, involves a lot with magic. If I recall correctly, the main character is part of this order of magicians and has been in his family for generations on generations, and finds out a secret that he doesn't necessarily agree with, or there's some sort of schism between the family, and that kind of instigates the entire story.
A lot of magic stories lately. I've noticed, especially from Image. We had Blackbird and the Mark Millar from the Magic Order.
Yeah,
Magic
absolutely.
Order, so.
Well, I think a lot of that is due to Dungeons and Dragons. I think its recent resurgence, and also the popularity of Game of Thrones, has kind of instigated a lot of people wanting that kind of high fantasy.
The TV show, The Magician's pretty popular.
Oh, yeah. Over on, is that on Sci-Fi, I think?
It's on Sci-Fi, yes.
Okay.
All right, cool. Anything else?
I think you also touched on Flash number 70. Flash has kind of been a peripheral character for me that I've always been interested in, but never really got into. I've watched the show. I've known about the Flash insofar as much as I can reasonably know while being a comic shop owner, but I've never really landed in that true blue fandom arc, and I think year one is a good starting place for me, and it will also give me the benefit for somebody coming into my shop and saying, hey, I'm kind of interested in Flash, I like the TV show, what should I read?
And I'm right there with you, all right, because I'm going to get Flash number 70 100% because that's one of my weekly pulls, all right, so I'm really looking forward to the year one storyline, but along with that, definitely continue to get the Batman Who Laughs, number 5, but I'm also probably going to pick up the new Star Wars Age of the Republic Boba Fett series. So any of you out there who are not reading any of these Star Wars comics, you should be, because there is a lot of information that is presented through the comics that tie into the films. So if you're looking for backstories or new information, definitely go and pick up. And this is the Age of the Republic series, so it's a time period where they're focusing on a specific character at a time before Emperor Palpatine took over. So.
Actually, I need to make a little bit of a correction. Age of the Republic was a previous series. Boba Fett is part of Age of Rebellion. So this actually takes place during the original trilogy. And they've recently also done Grand Moff Tarkin and Princess Leia. The great thing about these actual issues is they're all one-shots. So if you're just interested in that particular character, you don't have to invest in a full series or a full run. Or if you just kind of want to pick up something Star Wars in, little chunks, these one-shots are actually really good for that.
Awesome. Well, looks like we got a good week of comics to pull this week.
I will be very busy.
All right. We are going to take a real quick break, and we'll be back in a minute. Asked a lot of questions about comic books, and since we are experts in the industry, we try to take it back a little bit and give a little comics 101 information to those who may not yet be gurus. All right, and this week we've been asked the question, what is the difference between a trade paperback and a graphic novel? Jared?
It's a great question, and it's a very common question. And I think it's one of the ones that may scare off people the most. I know in my store, I typically use the term trade paperback quite frequently. And those individuals are like, well, I'm looking for a graphic novel, not a trade paperback. I'm like, okay, that's fine. The terms can be interchangeable, but if you really had to boil it down to a specific, a trade paperback tends to be a collection of individual comics that used to be released on the shelves as, issue 1, issue 2,
single
issue 3.
Issues, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And a graphic novel is something that's more self-contained. Something like Watchmen, V for Vendetta, Mouse. All these things are self-contained stories, like a book, but just has that graphic element to it. And most trade paperbacks are also numbered on the spine as a volume. So, for example, a trade paperback volume 1 would collect issues number 1 through 6 and would be volume 1. Volume 2 would be 7 through 12. But like I said, the terms can be interchangeable, but if we had to absolutely separate them into two different definitions, that's how I would do that.
So you got somebody come into your store, they're looking for, they're looking to jump right into Batman,
Mm-hmm.
And as we know, Batman's story is like
prolific history.
It's 80 years.
Yep.
Where do I start? Do I go back and read the very first issues of Batman, or can I start with something more recent? And
the answer is either. If you're the kind of person that feels like I need to start from the beginning, I'm a completionist, I'm a holist, I need to go in order all the way. It's out there. You can do it. It's going to be a project. It's going to be a lengthy endeavor. But my job, usually as a shop owner, is to find out what exactly you're looking for, because there is a difference between contemporary comics and classic comics. There are those landmark moments like The Killing Joke, Long Halloween, Batman Hush. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So there's a lot out there and there's a lot to choose from, and usually by doing a trade paperback or a graphic novel, it's a good way to put a whole story arc in someone's hand. They can feel like they got a sense of the character and the story, and then they're not feeling lost and kind of in the weeds with individual issue numbers like, well, this is 83, how do I know?
Yeah, and a good thing I like about trade paperbacks too is you can actually open up the cover or it's on the back and it'll tell you which specific issues this storyline was pulled from. So DC's been very good about this lately. As soon as they release their issues and they're off the shelves or they hit the back the back issue bins, they're putting them out in retail stores and Barnes and Nobles and Booksman. You can go in and get a trade paperback of Batman Rebirth Volume 1, you know, all the way through. Or you can go back and do the New 52, and you can actually go back and collect storylines from, you know, the last 80 years of Batman if you really want to.
Yeah, and they'll have whole hardcover omnibuses. They'll have individual collections of different eras. But the great thing is, more often than not, you're also getting these at a discount. So, for example, I know Image is really good about their volume number ones, mostly, of their ongoing series. You can get for $9.99. And when you consider that most individual issues are anywhere between $3 and $5, that's not a bad deal for 6 issues compiled into one book. Now, more often than not, you'll see those at, you know, $15, $20, and you're still getting a deal there. But like I said, the real good takeaway is the fact that you can have a full, complete story arc. You're not kind of left on a cliffhanger with an individual episode, and you get a really, really good feel for what you're getting into.
And 100% the way to go if you're going to try to go back and reread Saga or Paper Girls or Walking Dead.
Oh, for sure. And then 30 volumes. 30.
Right, and that's where we get into compendiums or omnibus, you know, which is a whole different conversation.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think that is a separate conversation for somebody that's looking for more of a, I'm really, really into this, I'm really invested into this, and I'm just going to go, you know, pedal to the floor on it.
Well, I mean, I got some single issues of some of those series, but some of them I definitely want to sit back and, you know, I'm just going to get the trades. It's a lot easier. They're on my wallet, and definitely a way to kind of keep it together in my mind. Yeah. Well, Jared, that was a great explanation. If anybody has any of those questions, be sure to comment, send us those tweets, let us know what's on your mind, and we'll be happy to answer them.
All right, we'll be back in a flash.
Wins and losses are determined in your training. You spend 3 to 4 days a week, maybe more, to prepare for 3 minutes in the ring. I was never the fastest or the strongest or the most athletic kid. I've always had to work for everything I've gotten. So having that time set out where it's like, all right, this is me time. I have to do this. This is my training. And sometimes that means waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, going to the gym because I got to work from 7 to 5. I've been very lucky. I've had very supportive parents that always pushed me, and great coaches. There's nothing that can beat it. You take the beatings and you learn so much through that when you get out here for competition, it's second nature. I've been doing a lot of amateur kickboxing, currently 6-2, a couple knockouts under my belt. My goal is to fight a couple more bigger venue amateur fights and then turn professional hopefully by the end of this year and see as far as it takes me. You know, I just don't want to go back in my life and say, I should have done that. That's what I tell everybody too, like don't ever pass up an opportunity that you may regret tomorrow. There is nothing that can stop me. The only person that can beat me is me. I know I have the talent and the ability, I just have to commit myself to doing it, and when I do, it's very hard to beat me.
We're back yet again, and we're getting ready to talk about our character spotlight. As I previously mentioned in the episode, I'm really excited for Flash number 70. And if you're anything like me, you kind of want to know more about the Scarlet Speedster. Tommy is one of our resident experts on the Flash, so we're going to sit here, talk to him about some of his favorite Flashes and his favorite moments.
Well, you're very kind, Jared. To call me an expert, you know, I have to say he is one of my favorite characters. Outside of the Batman and the Batman family, that's my go-to, my first comic love, but behind him definitely is Flash. I'm a fan. I still collect the comic books.
Yeah.
I have collected them from day one since I've been a comic book. You know.
What was your first Flash comic?
Believe it or not, it was probably Flash number 11, but Wally West Flash.
Okay.
So I guess they call volume 3. Volume 3 Flash?
Possibly.
I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was the issue number 11 of Wally West.
Okay.
Was probably my first one. So my first introduction to the Flash was through Wally West.
Okay.
However, you know, I did watch the cartoons as a kid, and that was Barry Allen. So for those of y'all who do not know, Barry Allen, if you're a fans of the TV show is super popular on the CW. I'm a fan. I watch it every week. Mm-hmm. For those of you who do not know, there is more than one Flash. Barry Allen, Wally West, and Jay Garrick. These characters have made appearances on the TV show, so if you are following that, but they are in different incarnations. But,
So who was the first?
the very first Flash. Okay, so way back when, in 1940, in the golden age of comics, we were introduced to Jay Garrick. He was the first Flash. Jay Garrick first appeared in Flash #1, created by Gardner Fox and Harry Lampert, and was published by All American Publications.
Okay.
Jay Garrick was a college student who accidentally inhales hard water vapors while on a smoke break in his chemistry lab.
No, that's
as a
not
result,
true. That's not possibly
as a
true.
result, he gains superhuman powers of speed and reflexes.
If it weren't the 40s where I felt like smoking was popular and very heavily advertised, I wouldn't believe it.
Not something we think about today. Not
Yeah.
something we think about today as far as like a superhero character who is, a speedster and runs a lot is actually got his powers while taking a smoke break. I do think this was later retconned. He just passed out and inhaled water vapor or hard water and still got his powers. But
Okay.
Jay Garrick's a little different than the Scarlet Speedster we know today. Jay Garrick had the red suit with the classic lightning bolt, but he also wore, what makes him distinct is he wore the silver,
The Hermes helmet.
yeah, which is a little reminiscence of a World War I helmet with the lightning bolts on the side. So that's Jay Garrick's biggest distinguisher. Also he's typically today shown as a little bit older than Barry Allen and sort of as a mentor. Jay Garrick was the Flash for originally until about the 1950s, where he was superheroes started to decline in the comic book world, and they started to cancel all these characters.
Yep.
So that was what we call in the world where the golden age started to fade out, and then a few years later they brought in what we call the silver age of comic books, which is where they were introduced to Barry Allen.
And Barry, of course, we all know at least from casual interest, he's kind of the main impetus for the current TV show. And, all of the Flashes have their own kind of individual set followings and fandoms. And you had mentioned Wally West was one of your favorites and is something that I hear a lot. Like, that's the one that people know the most because that was their early introduction. But Barry is also very interesting as well, given that timeline. So what makes Barry special or different?
Yeah, so Barry's origin is a little unique. Barry was a police forensic scientist, and that's sort of the title of what he was has sort of changed as today as we got introduced. He was like a police chemist back in the day, but now it's because forensics has been such a big field. That's what Barry's profession was. He was also he was known to be always late. He was very slow, and he was also a little aloof. So he was just this character that was just didn't have his act together. And as fate would have it, he was working in his police lab late one night, and he was struck by lightning and hit and knocked out amongst a bunch of chemicals. And when he wakes up, he is blessed with the powers of superhuman speed.
Okay.
So somewhat similar to Jay Garrick,
Yeah.
but a little bit different way of acquiring the powers.
With the lab and then accident, but and I think a lot of people also have seen that reiterated and put into film with the TV show. But Wally is also very interesting because he's in the show, but there's a little bit of difference from the comics. Of course, I can tell you're itching to talk about Wally.
I love Wally. Wally is I'm a big fan of Wally West. Also, I'm a big fan of Teen Titans. So, those of you who are fans of the comics, or if you're not a fan of or just a fan of the show, Wally West is the nephew of Barry Allen. He is actually Iris's nephew. Mm-hmm. So, through marriage, he is Barry's nephew as well. Wally West was the original Kid Flash, and he's a founding member of the Teen Titans and Dick Grayson's best friend. But he also was a fan of the Flash growing up, so he always got to go visit him in the summers when he'd go visit his Aunt Iris, and he got to see him. He was very excited about it. So, by chance, Wally was visiting Barry at his chemistry lab, and the exact same thing that happened to Barry happened to Wally. He was struck by lightning, knocked out by the chemicals, and woke up with superhuman speed.
I'm seeing a pattern.
This was sort of like at this time period, he was introduced in the late 50s where sidekicks were becoming popular. So he was he became Barry Allen's sidekick. So anyway, moving forward a little bit, Kid Flash, Wally West was around a lot. He was often running with the Teen Titans, but he would show up every once in a while. Barry Allen had his run on the Flash all the way up until the mid-'80s. when we got Crisis on Infinite Earths, which was, as if you don't know, was DC's excuse to clean up
Some continuity.
the multiverse.
Yeah.
All right. So at this point, there are at least 2 Earths that we know about, which is where the original Golden Age characters live on Earth 2. You got the Jay Garrick Flash, you got the original Superman, original Justice Society, and you've got your mainstream DC universe with Barry Allen and Hal Jordan, Green Lantern, and those characters. And DC decides to bring it all together. So the reason Crisis on Infinite Earth is such a big moment for the Flash, a couple things happen. One, it brings all the universe, it brings the entire multiverse together into one universe, so that we can all just follow along. All right. But it's also the cataclysmic moment when Barry Allen gives his life in pursuit of heroics, and he dies. So they kill him off. He literally just finished this huge trial in his mainstream series, and where he was found guilty for killing Eobard Thawne, the Reverse Flash. Once he was cleared of the charges, they canceled the series, brought up Crisis on Infinite Earth, killed him off. With Barry's death, Wally West steps up and takes on the mantle of the Flash, where he remains the Flash for the next 23 years.
Oh, wow.
So
That's a long run. Is that
very
longer
long.
than Jay and Barry's
No.
run? Okay.
No, but it's
But
still a long
as-
time.
as-
It's still a long time. Wally becomes a Flash. And initially, when Wally becomes the Flash, well, let me back up a little bit. Before he becomes the Flash, Wally actually has a disease and that keeps him from fully exploiting his powers. And actually, he kind of walks away from the Teen Titans just before this because he doesn't want to pursue he doesn't know what he wants to do.
Okay.
But once Barry dies, he feels that it's his duty to pick up the mantle and stay as the Flash. Now, as a part of the Crisis, Wally is hit with a particle cannon or something from the anti-monitor, and his disease is cured.
Oh, okay.
So he can now run without fear of dying. And then, but he doesn't go much faster than the speed of sound. So he doesn't go as fast as Barry because he doesn't want to trample on Barry's legacy.
Okay.
But as time moves on, and Professor Zoom shows up, and he decides he needs to really step his game up, and he does to push it and push it and push it. And eventually he gets as fast as Barry, and he actually becomes a lot faster.
Wow.
So he actually becomes the most powerful speedster of all. One of the other things that Wally West's character introduces to is the concept of the Speed Force, which I think is a conversation for another day.
I agree.
But for those of you who are fans of the show and want to know what that is, that was brought out through something that's what these speedsters tap into, and that's how they gain their speed.
That's a character unto itself, really.
Right.
And I think you're absolutely right. I think that's a conversation for another day. And I think you've given us a lot of good information and a lot to think about. For more information on The Flash and to pick up more products, be sure to visit your local comic book shop, and you can find them with comicshoplocator.com. We'll be right back.
And welcome back. All right, so it's that time of the day when we get to chance to really talk about what's going on out there. We got a few questions that came in. I think we've got some good ones today. So
Yeah, I'm really excited. The questions that you guys sent in so far were really, really interesting, and I think we picked some of our favorites.
great. So this comes from Madison, and she is asking, if I'm new to comics, where do I start?
Big question.
I'm sure you get this a lot.
I do.
Absolutely.
'Cause people come into the shop all the time. I usually try and garner information from the individual. You know, what are some of your interests if you're new to comics? What are your favorite books? What are your favorite movies? What are your favorite, XYZ? Because everyone has individual interests or things that they kind of attract towards. So if someone's saying, well, I don't really like flights and tights superheroes, that's great. There's a ton of stuff out
Image.
there.
Just go to Image. Just pick out
If
one.
you
There-
like sci-fi, we can do that. I think for most people, and again, this depends on age, background, etc. You know yourselves better than anybody else. So if somebody comes in and says, I'm just looking for something new, something interesting. I really like Stranger Things. This goes back to our conversation last week where I would recommend Paper Girls.
Absolutely.
If
Great
somebody
story.
comes in and says, I really just am interested in the art, I kind of like high fantasy and things along those lines, I would probably recommend Monstrous from Image. Absolutely phenomenal book. I've had more people come in and pick up that trade paperback to purchase as gifts So people are willing to spend their money to give that book away.
Wow.
That is an intense following for that book. But at the end of the day, if someone's like, man, I just saw that new Infinity War movie, Iron Man's my favorite, cool, we're going to get you started on Iron Man.
I mean, there's a lot of places to jump off from there.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said on our earlier conversation about trade paperbacks and graphic novels, there's a ton of resources out there. If you just want to read the Infinity Gauntlet series, or if you want to get back into Civil War, or whatever the case may be, there's a bunch of places to jump in with the Marvel Universe. I'm pretty specific too sometimes. I know I like to ask those questions too. What are your favorite things? What genres of films do you like? What are your favorite TV shows right now? Then you kind of give them some recommendation. But some people come to me and say, hey man, I really love Batman. I want to get into Batman.
Yeah.
Then I actually have a whole mental list. Let's start with year one. Batman year one, going to the Long Halloween, going to there's a whole list. Or some of my favorites are the Hush series.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. Like Hush for me, usually when I have somebody coming in asking for Batman, that is the most Batman that Batman has ever Batmaned. So I go with Hush. But
and I think we get almost every character in that one.
Yeah, pretty much. And ultimately, it goes back to I usually try and put a trade paperback in their hands. That way, they're not just left with a singular issue and they feel like it's kind of dropped off. They can get a full story. They can feel like, okay, I'm getting a little bit of investment into this. But those are always good first places to start. Find out what their interests are and go from there. Paint with a wide brush.
Yeah, so if you're curious about where to start and what to do, shoot us another comment, ask us. We're definitely happy to respond. But go into your local comic book store. Valuable information. People like Jared, they happy to talk about it. There are a lot of comic book dealers out there that their mission is to sell you your first comic. So don't be afraid. Come in, find out what it is. It's a great community to be a part of. A lot of information out there. Yep. All right.
What else we got?
Let's see. Next question here is, speaking of comics, starting with comics. This is something to be thinking about too. A lot of people don't realize this. There is a collecting aspect to comic. As much as just a reading and gaining information. But
absolutely.
What's a good comic collecting philosophy? Now, I don't know. I mean, as a retailer, sometimes your head may not be in the collecting space, but I do like to collect. Yeah. Now, I have to pick and choose because it's really easy to go to the dollar bins and spend a fortune picking up dollar comics, and it's like finding go full runs, which I am doing, by the way. I try to pick a series. I have back to my Batman, but I have a full, the entire Nightfall series. I have every issue, every spinoff that goes with that series individually collected. I did that in real time. However, I did miss the No Man's Land series, so I want to go back and get all of those. I'm down to my last two, Jared. Last two, which is the Harley Quinn one, and there's a showcase or a Secret Origins that had Nightwing. I think there's the last two I don't have, but I've got the rest of them, the entire run of them. And that's like a 3-year series, I think.
Absolutely.
In real time. But I do like to go out and collect, but it can be a little pricey. And here's the thing too, I have done this more than once, where I'm trying to collect a storyline, and I'm in a dollar bin, and I'm looking, I was like, that's cool, I don't have that one. And I pick it up and buy it for whatever the cost of it is, and I go home and I've got 3 of them already. I'm like, damn it, why did I do that? It's like I wasted. But then I go, okay, I've got an extra, but I have found an app that I use.
Yes.
Collectors.
Is that CLZ?
CLZ Collectors. And
CLZ is good, but you have to pay for it.
But I don't mind, because for me, it's like I'm paying that amount for that app when I buy 3 issues of the same comic. So for me, it's easy to kind of keep it, but you have to scan them. You have to put them in. If you don't put them in, you don't know. I can't tell you how many times I've forgot to scan my books.
And that's where I would direct you and a couple others. There's a free app out there that does the exact same thing called League of Comic Geeks. It's a free app, has the barcode scanner. The barcode scanner is actually a little bit better. I have used both. And it does the same thing. It'll compile all of your collections by publisher. It'll show you what you have, what you don't have. The community is great on there too, because you can leave reviews for the individual comics, talk to other members of League of Comic Geeks. But going back to the collecting philosophy, I think it boils down to what you're willing to invest and what you're willing to budget. Some people will stick with a singular character and collect everything that's in there. Other people are real avid readers and want to read everything that's out there. So I have some clients and subscribers that they'll just get Batman and Nightwing and that's it. I have other clients that get X-Men, every tie-in of a major event, an Image title, 3 Batman titles. It all kind of just depends.
I usually do try to pick up a number 1, especially if it's something from Image that sounds interesting, that might have potentiality for a show. You just never know. Or if it's like the the new DC Black Label, you know, Batman Damn #1. You know, I almost walked out of the store and didn't get that one. Thank you for making me get that. I did get a copy of that.
Very welcome.
And that jumped in price within a week, you know?
Yeah.
So there are things I do try to grab, you know, as they come out. If I have missed something and I want to go back and collect, you know, one of the things I like to do, this is what Comic Cons are for, you know?
Yeah.
Right now they've kind of become, you know, geek culture and cosplay, but, you know, originally it was like you went in there, you perused all those dollar bins, all those back issues, and found the ones you're looking for. And it's a great place to pick up, you know, some key issues, you know, whether it's a first appearance, whether it's a big event, but those are just ways to jump into it. And, you know, to each his own. I like to keep lists.
Yeah.
But again, if you're looking to be a collector and you're looking for those key issues, again, reach out to your local comic book shop and see what their opinion is. They're actually going to be a great resource. And check out previewsworld.com. You're going to be able to see the things coming down the pipeline.
And also make sure to keep tuning into this show. We're a great resource for you too.
Yeah. And that is all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, share. We really appreciate your participation and your support. We will see you next week. And remember, as always, to geek responsibly.